The frigid Seattle air bit at Amara Wilson's cheeks as she hurried down Fifth Avenue toward the glass tower that housed her tech company's headquarters. Her morning routine rarely varied. Black coffee from the artisan shop on the corner, a brisk walk regardless of weather, and at least 3 conference calls before noon. At 42, Amara had built her life with the same methodical precision she'd used to build her company from a startup to a multi-million-dollar enterprise. People streamed past her on the busy sidewalk, most hunched over phones or lost in wireless earbuds. Amara noticed how they all flowed around certain obstacles: trash cans, light poles, and the occasional person sitting on the sidewalk without ever really seeing them. She might have done the same if not for the flash of color that caught her eye. In the recessed doorway of a closed-down bookstore sat a young woman, maybe mid-20s, her belongings packed tightly in a weathered backpack beside her. Unlike the defeated posture Amara had come to expect from the city's growing homeless population, this woman sat cross-legged with surprising dignity, bent over a notebook balanced on her knee. What had caught Amara's attention was the page itself, filled with vibrant designs flowing from a pencil the woman clutched in fingerless gloves. Despite the cold, she seemed lost in her work, adding splashes of color from a small set of worn watercolors. Amara found herself slowing, then stopping completely. The young woman must have felt the shadow fall across her work because she looked up, immediately tensing. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her face showing the strain of outdoor living but still youthful. What struck Amara most were her eyes, clear, alert, and wary. "That's beautiful," Amara said, nodding toward the notebook. The young woman hesitated before responding. "Thanks." Her voice was quiet but not timid. She started to close the notebook. "Wait," Amara said. "I mean it. You're talented. Are you going to call the cops or something?" the young woman asked. "I'm not bothering anyone. This doorway's been empty for months." "No, nothing like that," Amara replied. "I'm just interested in your work." The woman studied Amara's face, seeming to take in her tailored coat, the designer bag, the overall aura of someone who moved through the world with the confidence money provides. Whatever she saw made her relax slightly. "I'm Sophia," she finally offered. "Amara. Well, Amara, unless you're looking to buy some art from a sidewalk gallery, I should probably get back to work." There was no bitterness in her tone, just pragmatism. "What kind of work did you do on before?" Amara asked, immediately regretting the awkward phrasing. Sophia's mouth quirked up at one corner. "Before I started calling concrete my mattress, I was a graphic designer. Good one too," she shrugged. Life happens. Instead of the standard platitudes that rose to her lips, Amara found herself reaching into her purse. Years of business instincts had taught her to read people quickly, to trust her gut about character. Something about Sophia's eyes, the careful organization of her few possessions, and the quality of her artwork triggered an idea, impulsive and possibly foolish, but compelling. "I want to try something," Amara said, pulling out her wallet. She extracted a sleek black credit card, the kind that came with no spending limit, and was available only to those whose net worth contained multiple commas. Sophia's eyes widened slightly as Amara held it out. "What's this?" Sophia asked, not reaching for it. "A test, maybe. Or an opportunity." Amara continued, holding the card out. "This has a $10,000 limit." Sophia let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Right, and you're just handing it to a stranger on the street?" "What's the catch?" "No catch. Just curiosity." Amara kept her voice casual, though her heart raced at the recklessness of what she was doing. "I'll be walking back this way tomorrow morning around this time. Show me what you choose to do with it." Sophia stared at the card, then at Amara's face, searching for the joke or the trap. "You're serious. Completely. Why would you do this?" Amara considered the question. "Let's just say I've interviewed hundreds of people wearing $1,000 suits who wouldn't impress me as much as what you're creating with almost nothing." She nodded toward the notebook. "Sometimes we need to be reminded of what really matters." With obvious reluctance, Sophia reached out and took the card, her cold fingers brushing Amara's warm ones. "This is crazy, probably," Amara agreed. "My security team would have a fit if they knew." "The pin is $42.90. Sophia held the card like it might bite her. "What if I just disappear? Or max it out on stupid stuff? Then I'll have learned something about people that will make me a bit more cynical than I already am." Amara checked her watch. I need to go. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. Wait, Sophia called as Amara turned to leave.
How will you find me tomorrow?
I might not be here, Amara smiled. Then I'll have my answer, won't I? As she walked away, Amara wondered what had possessed her to do something so completely out of character. She had always been calculated, measured, strategic. This impulsive gesture wasn't like her at all. But as she rode the elevator up to her corner office, she realized she felt more alive than she had in months. Whatever happened next would certainly be interesting. Behind her, on the cold sidewalk, Sophia stared at the black credit card in her palm. Her hand trembled slightly, and not just from the cold. $10,000. It might as well have been $1 million to someone who had been counting pennies for months. Her mind raced through the possibilities. A warm hotel room, new clothes, real food. Maybe enough left over for first and last month's rent on a tiny apartment. For a moment, darker thoughts intruded. She could buy a bus ticket, disappear to another city. This Amara person would never find her. Who gave a stranger a credit card anyway? Maybe it was fake. Or maybe it was some rich person's idea of a cruel joke. Sophia slid the card into the inner pocket of her jacket, the one she had sewn herself specifically to keep her few valuables safe while she slept. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She found herself unable to concentrate on her drawing. The weight of the card seemed to burn against her chest, demanding action. Several times she almost walked to the nearest store, ready to test if the card was real. Each time she stopped herself. As evening approached, she packed up her few belongings and headed toward the public library. It was warm there, and she could use the computers until closing time. The librarians knew her and didn't chase her away as long as she was quiet and clean. At a computer terminal tucked away in the corner, Sophia sat staring at the screen. Instead of checking job boards as she usually did, she found herself researching something else entirely. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as a plan began to take shape in her mind. By the time the library announced its impending closure, Sophia had made her decision. It wasn't what most people would do, she knew. But then again, she wasn't most people. Even homeless, even desperate, some principles remained. She slept that night in her usual spot, an overlooked corner of a parking garage where a security guard named Lou pretended not to see her if she was gone by 7 a.m. Despite the cold and the hard ground, Sophia slept soundly for the first time in months, the black credit card safely hidden, and her plan firmly in place. Tomorrow would change everything, but not in the way Amara Wilson might expect. Morning light filtered through the concrete pillars of the parking garage as Sophia rolled up her sleeping bag. Her back ached from another night on the hard ground, but her mind felt unusually clear. The black credit card was still safely tucked in her inner pocket, its presence both thrilling and terrifying. "You're up early," said Lou, the night security guard, making his final rounds before his shift ended. In his 60s, with a kind face weathered by years outdoors, Lou was one of the few people who treated her like a human being. "Big day," Sophia replied, stuffing her sleeping bag into her backpack. Lou raised an eyebrow. "Got a job interview?" "Something like that." She hesitated, then asked, "Lou, if someone handed you a bunch of money out of nowhere, what would you do with it?" He leaned on his flashlight, considering. "Depends on who's asking and why. Just curious." "Well," he said slowly, "when I was your age, I'd have blown it on stupid stuff. Now, I'd probably use it to fix whatever got me in trouble in the first place." He gave her a searching look. "You come into some money, kid?" Sophia shrugged. "Hypothetically." "Uh-huh." Lou wasn't fooled. "Whatever it is, be smart. Opportunities don't usually knock twice." "That's what I'm counting on," she said, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. As she walked out into the morning, Sophia's mind returned to the events that had led her here. 8 months ago, she'd had an apartment, a steady job at a design firm, and something resembling security. Then her mother got sick, cancer that spread faster than anyone expected. With no insurance and mounting medical bills, Sophia had emptied her savings and maxed out her credit cards, trying to give her mom some comfort in her final months. When her mother finally passed, Sophia was left with crushing debt, grief, and exhaustion. Missing work for hospital visits led to being laid off. No job meant no rent. No rent meant eviction. The downward spiral had been breathtakingly quick, She'd applied for countless positions, but the employment gap and lack of a permanent address worked against her. Companies wanted polished portfolios and fresh work, not excuses about personal tragedies. Now walking toward downtown with purpose in her step, Sophia rehearsed her plan again. She checked the time on a bank's digital display, 7:42 a.m. If the woman, Amara, kept her word, Sophia had less than 2 hours. Her first stop was a coffee shop, not for coffee, but for their bathroom. She washed her face and brushed her teeth with supplies from her backpack. Looking in the mirror, she pulled her hair back neatly and pinched some color into her pale cheeks. She wouldn't be mistaken for a business executive, but she looked presentable enough not to be immediately turned away. The mall wouldn't open until 10 a.m., but certain stores had earlier hours. She found what she was looking for. An electronics store with its gates already raised, employees setting up for the day. Taking a deep breath, she walked in. "Can I help you?" asked a young employee, eyeing her worn clothes with slight suspicion. "I hope so," Sophia said, straightening her shoulders. "I need a laptop. Something good enough for graphic design work." The employee looked doubtful. "Those start around $1,000. "That's fine," Sophia said, her heart pounding as she pulled out the black card. 20 minutes later, she walked out with a mid-range laptop. Not the most expensive model, but powerful enough for design software. The transaction had gone through without a hitch. The card was real. Amara had been serious. Her next stop was a phone store where she purchased a prepaid smartphone with 3 months of service. Then a small clothing shop where she bought 2 professional outfits. Nothing fancy, just clean slacks, button-down shirts, and a blazer that actually fit. At each store, she felt the curious stares, aware of how she looked carrying expensive purchases while wearing worn-out clothes. But the black card kept working, and her confidence grew with each successful transaction. By 9:30 a.m., she had spent just over $2,000, a sum that would have seemed impossible yesterday. But instead of feeling reckless, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Her final stop before meeting Amara was a co-working space she'd researched the night before. Located in a renovated warehouse, it offered desk space, internet, printing services, and most importantly, shower facilities for members. The receptionist, a woman with bright blue hair, looked up as Sophia approached. "Welcome to the Hive. How can I help you?" "I'd like to sign up for a membership," Sophia said, trying to project confidence despite her appearance. "Great. We have several options." The receptionist explained the different plans available. Sophia chose a 1-month membership, wincing slightly at the cost, but knowing it was essential to her plan. After completing the paperwork and receiving her access card, she asked, "Could I use the shower facilities now?" "Of course. Down the hall, first door on the left. Towels are provided." Standing under hot water for the first time in weeks, Sophia felt tears mix with the spray. She allowed herself exactly 1 minute to feel overwhelmed before shutting off the emotion. She couldn't afford to break down now. Clean, dressed in new clothes with her hair still damp, she packed her old clothes in her backpack and stored it in the locker provided by the co-working space. With her new laptop tucked under her arm and 15 minutes to spare, she headed back to the spot where she'd met Amara. The morning crowd pushed past her as she stood in the same doorway as yesterday, but everything felt different. She wasn't invisible anymore. People glanced at her, not with pity or avoidance, but with the casual indifference they showed anyone who looked like they belonged. At precisely 10:05 a.m., she spotted Amara walking down the street, coffee in hand, scanning the sidewalk. When their eyes met, Sophia saw surprise flicker across the executive's face. "You're still here," Amara said, stopping in front of her. "I said I would be." Sophia shifted the laptop under her arm. "And I've got something to show you." Amara glanced at Sophia's new clothes, the laptop, the professional appearance. "You've been busy. May I?" Sophia gestured to a nearby cafe with outdoor seating. They settled at a small table, and Sophia opened the laptop. "First, here's your card back," she said, sliding the black credit card across the table. "I spent $23.27.84. Everything else is untouched." Amara's eyebrows rose. "Most people would have used more." "I'm not most people." Sophia turned the laptop screen toward Amara. "I used what I needed, not what I wanted." On the screen was a digital portfolio, Sophia's work from before, salvaged from cloud storage she still had access to, along with new designs she'd created on her old notebook, now photographed and enhanced. "This is what I do," Sophia said simply. "Or what I did before. What I can do again, with the right tools." She gestured to the laptop. "I didn't need a hotel room or new sneakers. I needed a way back." Amara scrolled through the portfolio, her expression thoughtful. "Why didn't you just take the money and run?" "I wouldn't have found you." Sophia considered the question. "Because that would have solved today's problem, but not tomorrow's or next month's." She leaned forward. "Look, I don't know why you gave me your card. Maybe it was a weird rich person game, or maybe you were actually trying to help. Either way, I decided to use it to help myself." She pulled out her new phone and showed Amara the screen. "I've applied for 3 jobs this morning. I have a place to work, to shower, to look professional for interviews. I have the tools I need to start freelancing again." She took a deep breath. "I don't want charity. I want a chance." Amara sat back, studying Sophia with new interest. "What happened?" "Before all this?" Sophia hesitated, then gave the short version of her mother's illness, the bills, the job loss. She didn't mention the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, or how she'd sold everything she owned piece by piece, or how some days the hopelessness was so crushing she could barely move. When she finished, Amara was silent for a long moment. The sounds of the cafe, espresso machines hissing, conversations flowing around them filled the space between them. "Our company needs a new website," Amara finally said. "And our marketing materials could use a fresh perspective." She pulled out her business card and slid it across the table. "Send me a proposal. 3 months of contract work, with the possibility of extension." Sophia stared at the card, her heart pounding. The logo at the top belonged to one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Seattle. "Is this a real offer or another test?" she asked carefully. Amara smiled. "Both, maybe. But you've already passed the first test." She stood, leaving her card and the black credit card on the table. "Keep it for now. You might need it for software or other business expenses. We'll count it against your first invoice." As Amara walked away, Sophia sat frozen, staring at the 2 small pieces of plastic that somehow represented an entirely new future. For the first time in 8 months, the knot of anxiety in her chest began to loosen. She had a long way to go, but for the first time, the path forward wasn't shrouded in darkness. She opened her laptop again and began drafting a proposal. 3 weeks after her life-changing encounter with Amara, Sophia sat at her dedicated desk in the co-working space, staring intensely at her laptop screen. The office buzzed with the quiet energy of other freelancers and entrepreneurs, the soft clicking of keyboards and occasional murmur of phone conversations creating a soothing background rhythm. For someone who had spent months surrounded by the harsh noises of the street, this environment felt almost unreal in its normalcy. Her proposal to Amara's company had been accepted within 48 hours. The contract was fair, even generous. 3 months of work redesigning the company's website and refreshing their brand materials. The first payment had already hit her newly opened bank account, enough to secure a tiny studio apartment with a 6-month lease. She would move in next week once the previous tenant moved out. Sophia took a sip of her coffee, grimacing at its coldness. She'd been so absorbed in her work that she'd forgotten about it entirely. The design on her screen, a reimagined homepage for Amara's tech company, was coming together beautifully. But something still wasn't quite right with the color balance. "You're going to burn a hole through that screen," said a friendly voice. Sophia looked up to see Raj, another regular at the co-working space. A web developer in his 30s with perpetually rumpled clothes and an easy smile. He had been the first person to welcome her. "Just trying to figure out why this doesn't feel right," she said, gesturing to the screen. Raj leaned over, careful not to invade her space but close enough to see her work. "The gradient's fighting with your main text. Try dropping the opacity by about 20%. She made the adjustment and immediately the design snapped into balance. "That's it." "Thanks. No problem. Hey, a bunch of us are grabbing lunch at the Thai place down the street. Want to join?" The invitation caught her off guard. Normal social interactions, lunch with colleagues, casual conversation, had become foreign concepts during her months of homelessness. The instinct to decline was strong, born from the habit of isolation and the fear of not fitting in. "I've got this deadline," she began. "It's just an hour," Raj said with a shrug. "The pad thai is worth it, I promise." Something in his casual acceptance made her hesitate. She glanced at her nearly completed work, then back at Raj's patient expression. "Sure," she finally said. "That would be nice." Saving her work, she grabbed her jacket, the new one she'd purchased with the black card still hanging neatly in her locker. As they walked to the restaurant, Sophia found herself relaxing into the simple pleasure of normal conversation about work, the neighborhood, and the unreliable Seattle weather. Lunch with the co-working group turned out to be exactly what she needed, a reminder that she was rejoining the world of everyday interactions and ordinary pleasures. She contributed to discussions about client challenges and design trends, surprised at how quickly her professional identity resurfaced after months of being defined primarily by her homelessness. Returning to her desk afterward, Sophia felt a renewed energy. She polished the homepage design and moved on to the company's mobile interface, losing herself in the work until her phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was Amara. "How's the redesign coming? Available for a progress meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Sophia texted back a confirmation, feeling both nervous and excited. She'd been communicating with Amara's team through email and shared files, but this would be their first face-to-face meeting since that morning at the cafe. The next day, Sophia arrived at Amara's office building 15 minutes early, dressed in one of her new outfits with her portfolio loaded on her laptop. The sleek glass tower seemed less intimidating now that she was entering as a contractor, rather than a homeless person. At the reception desk, she gave her name and waited to be escorted upstairs. Looking around the modern lobby with its clean lines and minimalist decor, she couldn't help but think about how, just a month ago, she would have been immediately viewed with suspicion if she'd tried to enter this building. "Sophia?" A young assistant appeared at her side. "I'll take you up to the conference room." The elevator ride to the 38th floor was swift, the glass walls offering expanding views of the city as they ascended. Sophia spotted landmarks that had become familiar during her months on the street: the public library where she'd sought warmth, the parking garage where Lou had looked the other way, the doorway where Amara had found her. They looked different from this height, smaller somehow. The conference room was already occupied when she arrived. Amara sat at the head of the table, deep in conversation with two other executives. She looked up as Sophia entered, a smile of recognition warming her face. "Sophia, thanks for coming in. This is Daniel, our Chief Marketing Officer, and Priya, our User Experience Director." Handshakes were exchanged, and Sophia was struck by the normalcy of it all, as if she hadn't been sleeping on concrete less than a month ago. As she set up her laptop for the presentation, she felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but it was the healthy kind that came with professional stakes rather than survival ones. "Before you start," Amara said, "I want to acknowledge that we've received enthusiastic feedback from the team about your initial designs. You've impressed a lot of people already." The warmth of the compliment spread through Sophia's chest, but she kept her expression professionally pleased rather than revealing how much those words meant to her. "Thank you. I've enjoyed digging into your brand and thinking about how to evolve it." For the next hour, Sophia presented her concept for the website redesign, explaining the thinking behind her creative choices and demonstrating how the new interface would function. She fielded questions with growing confidence, drawing on the expertise that had lain dormant during her months of struggle. "What I appreciate," Daniel said, "is how you've maintained our core identity while making it feel more accessible. This feels like our company, just better." "Exactly," Sophia agreed, clicking to the next slide. "Your current site focuses on technical capabilities, which makes sense given your audience. But I wanted to balance that with more human elements, showing how your technology improves people's lives." Priya nodded approvingly. "I like the way you've created visual pathways through complex information. It's intuitive." As the meeting progressed, Sophia felt a shift in how they were relating to her, not as a charity case or a curiosity, but as a professional with valuable insights. By the time she closed her presentation, the atmosphere in the room was energized with possibilities. "This is excellent work," Amara concluded. "I'd like you to proceed with the full implementation. Priya's team will help with any technical resources you need." The meeting broke up with handshakes and promises of follow-up emails. As Daniel and Priya left the room, Amara gestured for Sophia to stay behind. "How's everything else going?" she asked once they were alone, her tone shifting from professional to personal. Sophia considered how to answer. The truth was complicated. She was sleeping on an air mattress at the co-working space until her apartment was ready, carefully budgeting every dollar, still jumping at loud noises, and occasionally waking in a panic, forgetting she wasn't on the streets anymore. But she was also designing again, eating regularly, showing up as her professional self, and beginning to hope. "I'm getting there," she said finally. "I found an apartment. Small, but it's mine. I move in next week." Amara nodded, something like satisfaction crossing her face. "And the card? Have you needed it for anything else?" "Just the software licenses and some reference books. I've kept all the receipts." Sophia pulled the black credit card from her wallet and placed it on the table. "Actually, I wanted to return it. The advance on the contract is more than enough now." Amara made no move to take the card. "Keep it a bit longer, just in case." Sophia started to protest, but something in Amara's expression stopped her. This wasn't about money. It was about trust. "Thank you," she said instead, tucking the card back into her wallet. "You know," Amara said, gathering her papers, "when I gave you that card, I didn't know what to expect. Most people would have used it very differently." "Most people haven't been where I've been," Sophia replied. "When you have nothing, you learn what actually matters." Amara studied her for a long moment. "We're hosting a company retreat next month, 3 days at a lodge on Lake Chelan. As the lead on our rebranding, you should be there. It's all covered, of course." The invitation represented another step toward normal life, toward belonging somewhere again. "I'd like that," Sophia said. As she packed up her laptop, Sophia thought about how differently this meeting could have gone if she hadn't been given the chance to show her capabilities. If Amara had just walked by that day, or given her money instead of opportunity. Outside the building, standing on the same sidewalk where their paths had first crossed, Sophia took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The sky was clearing after morning rain, patches of blue appearing between clouds. Pedestrians streamed past, each caught up in their own world. She wondered how many of them, like her just weeks ago, were invisible, their talents and potential obscured by circumstances. How many just needed someone to stop and see them? With her laptop secure under her arm, Sophia joined the flow of people, no longer outside the current but moving with it, heading toward a future she was rebuilding, one design at a time. The company retreat at Lake Chelan arrived faster than Sophia expected. 2 months had passed since her first encounter with Amara, and life had transformed in ways she could barely comprehend. Her tiny studio apartment now had actual furniture, mostly second-hand but chosen with a designer's eye for potential. The hollow feeling of emptiness was gradually being replaced by something resembling stability. The morning of the retreat, Sophia stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. The face looking back at her had filled out slightly, no longer gaunt from malnutrition. Her hair, freshly trimmed, framed her face in a way that felt both professional and true to herself. She'd never been one for heavy makeup, but today she added a touch of color to her lips, a silent acknowledgement that she was rejoining the world of people who had the luxury of caring about such things. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Outside your building. No rush." The company had arranged for employees to carpool to the retreat, and Sophia had been assigned to ride with Priya, the UX director, and 2 developers she hadn't yet met. Grabbing her small suitcase and backpack, Sophia took one last glance around her apartment. After months of having nowhere to call home, the simple act of locking a door behind her still felt meaningful. Outside, Priya waved from the driver's seat of a sleek SUV. Sophia loaded her luggage into the trunk and slid into the back seat next to a young man with glasses who introduced himself as Dev. "You're the new designer, right?" asked the woman in the passenger seat, turning to face her. "I'm Aisha. I've been working on the back end for the sections you redesigned." "Nice to finally meet you," Sophia said. "I've seen your name in about 100 email chains." The drive east from Seattle to Lake Chelan took nearly 3 hours, but it passed quickly as the 4 of them moved from polite work conversation to more personal topics. Sophia listened more than she spoke, still cautious about revealing too much of her recent past. "So how did you connect with Amara?" Dev asked as they crossed the mountains, the landscape changing from dense evergreens to the drier terrain of eastern Washington. Sophia hesitated. "We met by chance," she said carefully. "She saw some of my work and offered me the contract." "Lucky break," Aisha commented. Amara doesn't usually get involved in hiring contractors. She must have really liked your portfolio. Priya, catching Sophia's eye in the rearview mirror, smoothly changed the subject. Speaking of portfolios, did everyone see the final homepage design that launched yesterday? The analytics already show a 22% increase in user engagement. Sophia felt a rush of pride. The redesigned website had gone live ahead of schedule, earning praise from throughout the company. What had started as a 3-month contract was already being discussed as a potential permanent position. The retreat venue was a sprawling lodge on the shores of Lake Chelan, with rustic luxe cabins scattered among pine trees. As they pulled up to the main building, Sophia took in the sweeping views of the lake, its water a deep blue against the surrounding hills turning golden with autumn. Beautiful, isn't it? Priya said, coming to stand beside her while the others collected their luggage. First company retreat? That obvious, huh? Priya laughed. You have that trying not to look impressed expression. Don't worry, I was the same at my first one 3 years ago. She nodded toward the reception area. Let's get checked in. The welcome dinner is at 6. Sophia's cabin was small but beautifully appointed, with a deck overlooking the water and a wood stove already prepped with kindling. She unpacked her few clothes, hanging them carefully in the cedar closet. Among them was a new outfit she'd splurged on for the retreat. Nothing extravagant, but nicer than anything she'd owned in years. By the time she made her way to the main lodge for dinner, most of the company's 60 employees had arrived. The great room was filled with animated conversation, people greeting colleagues they normally saw only on video calls or passed briefly in hallways. Sophia filled a plate from the buffet and looked for a place to sit, that familiar outsider feeling creeping back despite her professional success of recent weeks. Before she could retreat to an empty table, she heard her name called. Sophia, over here. Amara waved from a table near the massive stone fireplace, where she sat with Daniel from marketing and 2 other executives Sophia had yet to meet. As Sophia joined them, Amara made introductions. This is Sophia Zhang, the brilliant designer behind our new website. Sophia, this is Thomas, our CFO, and Layla, who heads up our engineering team. We've been hearing good things, Thomas said, his handshake firm. The board specifically mentioned the redesign in our last meeting. Apparently, their grandchildren can finally explain to them what our company actually does. Everyone laughed, and Sophia felt herself begin to relax. Glad I could translate tech speak into human language. That's exactly it, Layla said enthusiastically. Most designers just make things pretty. You've made our complex systems accessible without dumbing them down. The conversation flowed easily through dinner, touching on work, but also extending to books, travel, and the local wine region. Sophia contributed when she had something to add, but mostly she observed the easy camaraderie of people who had worked together for years, building something they all believed in. After dessert, Amara clinked her glass for attention. The room gradually quieted as all eyes turned to her. Just a quick welcome before we get to the fun part of the evening, she said, standing. First, thank you all for another incredible quarter. Our growth numbers are outstanding. Our new products are launching on schedule, and somehow, miraculously, we're all still speaking to each other. Appreciative laughter rippled through the room. This retreat is about 2 things, Amara continued. Rest because you've all earned it, and connection, because that's what makes us more than just a successful company. It makes us a community, she raised her glass, to building something that matters together. Glasses were raised around the room, and the gentle clink of toasts blended with renewed conversation. As the formal dinner transitioned to a more relaxed gathering, with some people moving to the outdoor fire pit and others breaking into smaller conversational groups, Sophia found herself drawn into a discussion about the company's origin story. Amara started it in her apartment. Raj explained, having arrived with the last carpool group. Just her and a whiteboard full of ideas everyone said were impossible. I didn't know that, Sophia said, genuinely interested. Thomas nodded. She had just walked away from a high-paying job at one of the tech giants. Everyone thought she was crazy. What made her do it? Sophia asked. Layla shrugged. You'd have to ask her. But knowing Amara, it was probably some combination of being told she couldn't and deciding people deserved better technology. Later, as the evening wound down, Sophia stepped outside onto the wide deck overlooking the lake. The night air was crisp, stars impossibly bright away from city lights. She breathed deeply, still adjusting to the reality that this was now her life. Standing on an expensive deck at a company retreat, respected for her work, invited into conversations as an equal. Bit overwhelming, isn't it? Amara's voice came from the shadows near the railing. Sophia startled slightly. I didn't see you there. Sorry. Amara moved into the pool of light spilling from the windows. I come out here every retreat. Best view in the place. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out at the moonlight reflecting on the lake. I overheard some of the team singing your praises earlier, Amara said finally. Layla wants to steal you for the product team. Daniel says marketing deserves you more. Sophia felt a flutter of pleasure at the recognition. They've all been incredibly welcoming. Because you're good at what you do. Amara turned to face her. But I suspect you always were. The unspoken question hung between them. How someone with Sophia's talent had ended up homeless, sleeping in doorways. Sophia leaned against the railing, deciding it was time for honesty. My mom got sick about a year ago. Pancreatic cancer, already spread when they found it. The words came more easily than she expected. Perhaps because enough time had passed, or perhaps because of the darkness that hid her expression. I was all she had. No insurance. I covered her care until she passed, then couldn't cover my own bills. Amara listened without interrupting. Her silence a space for Sophia's story to unfold. The thing is, Sophia continued, it happened so fast. One day I had a life, a career, an apartment full of stuff. Then suddenly I was sleeping in a parking garage because the security guard felt sorry for me. She shook her head at the memory. Everyone thinks there's this huge distance between normal life and homelessness. There isn't. It's a hair's width for most people. I know, Amara said quietly. Something in her tone made Sophia look at her more closely. You do, don't you? Sophia realized. That's why you stopped that day. Why you gave me the card. Amara's smile was tinged with old pain. Different circumstances, same outcome. I was 19, ran away from a bad situation at home, ended up living in my car for 8 months. A professor noticed I was wearing the same clothes every day, showering at the gym. He helped me get a scholarship, a campus job, changed everything. The revelation hung in the cool night air between them, not just a shared experience, but a recognition of the razor-thin line between stability and freefall. You know, Sophia said after a moment, when you gave me that card, my first instinct was to get a hotel room, take a hot shower, sleep in a real bed. She smiled at the memory of her own thought process. Then I realized that would feel amazing for one night, and I'd wake up right back where I started. But with better hair, Amara joked softly. They both laughed, the sound drifting out over the dark water. I've been thinking, Amara said, her tone shifting to something more businesslike. Your contract is up for renewal next month. The team wants to bring you on full-time. I wanted you to know before the formal offer comes through. Sophia felt a surge of emotion, relief, pride, gratitude, but kept her voice steady. I'd like that. Good. Amara pushed away from the railing. There's just one condition. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the black credit card, holding it out to Sophia. I want you to keep this. I don't need... Amara cut her off with a gentle shake of her head. Not for you. For when you find someone else who needs a chance, not a handout. Sophia stared at the card, understanding dawning. You want me to pass it on? When the time comes, Amara confirmed. You'll know when. As Sophia accepted the card, their eyes met in perfect understanding. What had started as a test had become something more. A circle completing itself. A promise to remember that talent and potential often hide in plain sight, waiting for someone to stop and truly see. 1 year to the day after Amara had handed Sophia that black credit card on a cold Seattle sidewalk, Sophia stood in front of a small crowd gathered in the company's largest conference room. The space had been transformed for the evening, with rows of chairs facing a small stage and catering tables along the back wall. I remember thinking it was some kind of cruel joke, Sophia said into the microphone, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Public speaking had never been her favorite thing, but tonight was different. Tonight mattered. Who gives a complete stranger their credit card? But that single act of trust changed everything for me. From her position at the podium, she could see familiar faces. Raj from the co-working space, now a close friend. Priya and Daniel from the marketing team. Lou, the security guard who'd looked the other way during her darkest times, now employed as part of the company's facilities team. And Amara standing at the back of the room, arms crossed, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth.